So Central Falls has the lowest homeownership rate, and that's also a priority for me. So thanks to my planning director, Tom Deller, who's here, we have identified empty lots in the city, and we're building homes that are going to be sold to the residents of the city of Central Falls.
It's just so important that we continue to grow smart within our state.
We're very excited that housing is having its moment. The need has always been there.
The planning and construction of communities that create compact, mixed-use neighborhoods in close proximity.
Transit needs to be frequent and reliable, while housing nearby needs to be affordable.
And thankfully, we have some very interesting examples going on in Rhode Island.
And it can only happen with smart planning and good collaboration.
I want to shout out to our team at Housing Works. My colleague Annette Bourne and Bryce Kelly are here with me today, and we could not do the work without their expertise as well too. And so thank you for all of the efforts going on. And we're very excited that housing is having its moment again in our state. The need has always been there, as our fact book has documented year after year after year. Political attention and money aren't always there at the same time, and we have the three-legged stool together now, and so here's an opportunity, and certainly around TOD is a great opportunity. We used to get this before in Rhode Island, didn't we? And Mayor, our keynote speaker spoke about it before, and you only have to look at kind of the Mill Village developments in our communities where we had the business center, the factory, the mill, and we had jobs and housing of different sizes. You could walk to work, you could ride your horse to work, you could take a trolley to work depending on the time. You know, the model wasn't perfect, right, as we know, and there were some issues, but that concept of connecting those things together, I think, is what we need to kind of relive and look back at how do we use these assets. And thankfully, we have some very interesting examples going on in Rhode Island, and so I don't want to talk long. I also don't want to spend, even though every single person on this panel I could go on for hours in terms of their work in their community, I just want to quickly welcome them all and encourage them to talk a little bit more about their interest in this when they come. We've got a flagship of folks here as well too, mayors and town managers from Mayor Rivera from Central Falls, Mayor Picozzi from Warwick, town manager Kate Michaud. Dan Rivera is joining us again, as we know, our keynote speaker. My mayor, Mayor Don Grebien, is here, and poor Don gets to hear a lot from me on these topics as well too. And Mayor Sullivan from Brockton, welcome to Rhode Island. You have your passport, I assume.
I do, yes.
Okay. But we're glad that you could join us, and we're eager to hear. My previous position, as my colleague Scott mentioned, was that I was chair of a housing advocacy group in Massachusetts, CHAPA, and so worked a lot. And that is how I know Mr. Carman, who is the guru of all things TOD in Massachusetts and around here. And so glad to have Ted here. Ted is president of Concord Square Planning and Development in Boston, and with his colleague and Eleanor White and CHAPA board member, I might know as well too, has done some amazing work around TOD and writing the book, if you will, and writing the legislation in Massachusetts as well. And so look forward. And as always, there's a Rhode Island connection. Ted started his career in Newport, Rhode Island, and worked on housing issues there as well too, and was involved in some of the early days of Church Community Housing Corporation as well too, and worked came to Newport as for his service and was at the Officers Naval Academy there for a while. So really pleased to see Ted here today too, and to hear from his expertise. So I think we're starting with Ted. Is that correct, Scott? So we're starting with Ted, and then we're going to ask each mayor to give a 5 or 6 minute, and I will try to police that the best that I can, comment about what you're working on. So
let's have the mayor go first.
Okay, then Mayor, we'll let you go first.
Good morning, everybody. You know, we needed that intermission. You had a kid, Dan Rivera from Lawrence, and I'm just a kid from Brockton, so we needed a little bit of space in between. So I'm excited to be here today. When I was leaving the house this morning, I have 3 children. My youngest, William, who's 10, said, "Dad, where you going?" I said, "I'm going to see some great people down in Providence." He goes, what the heck do they want to hear from you about? So let's make sure it's pretty beneficial, so when at the dinner table tonight, I can be all right. Well, my name's Bob Sullivan, and I am the mayor of the city of Brockton, Massachusetts. We call it the City of Champions. About 106,000 people. We have 3 commuter stops in the city of Brockton. You can jump on the train and get into South Station in Boston in about 35 minutes. So I was a city councilor, councilor at large, serving the whole city for 14 years. I have a law degree, I have an MBA. So when I was elected to the mayor of the city that I grew up in, it was January 6, 2020 when I got sworn in, which was about 6 weeks before the pandemic. But when I came in, I said, we need to treat this like a business. Brockton is a $500 million business known as the City of Brockton, right? We're in the people business, and I know every mayor here can attest to that. We needed to, first of all, market Brockton, right? We needed to market Brockton. We needed to think outside the box. We needed to be business friendly, and we really needed to use transit-oriented development as a catalyst to development. Now, growing up in Brockton, you know, if you hear Brockton on the news, it's always the bad stuff, right? It's always the arrests and the drugs and stuff. They don't talk about the 6 kids that graduated from Brockton High last year that went to Ivy. And Brockton High is the largest public high school east of the Mississippi, almost 5,000 kids. So we're trying to leverage what we already have, right? The historic buildings. A lot of shit was the shoe capital of the world at one point. So to have someone like a Ted Carman come in and invest is wonderful. But every tool in the toolbox needs to be utilized. It has to be utilized. So when Dan Rivera took the helm of mass development, one of my first meetings was to meet him, and at that time, Lieutenant Governor Polito in Boston at the State House, to really say, hey, listen, Brockton needs to be on the radar of not just the local developers, not just developers of Massachusetts, the Commonwealth, but beyond. And we're starting to see that come to fruition. I had a meeting just the other day with a major developer in Nashville, Tennessee, and he owns the Nashville Predators, the NHL team. And I said, Mr. Freeman, why is Brockton on your radar? I mean, I'm happy you're here. Let's walk and talk. I'm going to give you a tour of the city. But, you know, why are you here? And he said, because, number one, you as a mayor are welcoming development in Brockton. And number one. Number two, you have 2 Starbucks and a Chick-fil-A, so you must be doing something. And I corrected him. We actually have a 3rd in the queue right now. But I think what's important to understand is that Brockton is geographically located pretty close to Rhode Island, right, and really close to Boston. So we need to utilize that and market that as well. The other thing I think it's important right now is a lot of young professionals are priced out of Boston and Dorchester and Charlestown and Braintree. Use all the tools. The HDIP, again, the Housing Development Incentive Program, has really been a win-win for everybody. We have 201 out of the 520 units that are developed downtown. 201 uses HDIP. We have another 450 units in the core of the city teed up right now in the planning stages, another 700 units right now in the backlog waiting for additional funds to come under the Haley-Driscoll administration. But I also think you need to be able to show as a leader, as a CEO, that there's skin in the game on the city side. So I was able to go to the city council, get a $98 million authorization. We already have it. We got 2.5% interest rate on that. It's already in the bank, to do a new public safety building in the city of Brockton. The fire station downtown was really wired, and I'm the son of a history teacher, this is a fact. Thomas Edison was in the city of Brockton for 2 years. The fire station we're using right now is still wired by Edison. It needs to come offline. It's crazy. It's crazy. But I'll tell you right now, that $98 million incentive is going to be a city block. We've done some friendly takings. We are really trying to figure out how we can attract more development downtown. But the true hinge to that is the transit-oriented. So to come here today, I don't really want to be repetitive of what Dan said, but historic tax credits have been exceptionally beneficial. The work of mass development, the work of mass hire, using the TIF program, the TIE program, the DIF program, all these acronyms, just use them, they work. But I want to tell you right now, it's luxury market rate. And as a kid that grew up in Brockton, I never thought I'd say that. I mean, what they're building right now downtown in Brockton, it really looks like Newbury Street in Boston, right? Or some of the beautiful things down here in Providence. But we also know that Brockton is not a wealthy community, never has been. My grandparents came from Ireland to work in the shoe factories. We have the highest population of Cape Verdean residents and business owners in Northeast. Absolutely. I just went to Cape Verde and met with the president 2 weeks ago. So, but it's not just the luxury market rate. It has to be affordable. So that 40R smart growth has a requirement that at least 20% have to be affordable. But then you have to work as a political leader. You have to work with your other people on the other side of the aisle. In Brockton, it's the city council. And you have to educate and inform. You have to educate and inform. When I asked him to expand the overlay district into a different part of the city of Brockton, they all looked at me and said, why? I said, because it's the Sisters of Jesus Crucified and Sorrowful Mother convent over there. You know, back in the day, it was 200 nuns. It's 6 there now. We have to be able to look in the future, right? Learn from the past, right, the history, but forge ahead in the future. And they passed it, and right now we have about 150 units teed up on that side of the city of Brockton, which again is going to be utilized and transit-oriented. As mayor of the city of Brockton, I also chair the Bat Bus Corporation, which is Brockton Area Transit. It's our local bat bus, but it does go into Boston as well. So again, we need to continue to work with state partnerships. We need to look for all grants that are out there right now. There are a lot of grants out there that you're going to hear from Mr. Carman, some low interest rate loans. But at the end of the day, what we as mayors need to do is make sure, remember the old adage, if you build it, they will come, right, from Field of Dreams? That's true. It does work. But you also have to educate and inform. But you also have to think outside the box and travel. So that's why I'm here today, just to tell you what I've done. I went to Greenville, South Carolina recently. My wife wasn't happy, but I went down there because South Carolina is an example of what can happen for a main street. And I took away some really great people, ideas from the mayor and from the chamber down there. So again, attracting really great people, but also remembering that your constituencies, the people that live here, for me, it's Brocktonians. I don't want to lose them. I don't want them to go away. I want to add to the base, not subtract. And it has been successful, but we also have to be able to provide some of the amenities that people want. So you have to have the entertainment, right? So we have the Brockton Rocks baseball team, we have skating rinks, we have a municipal golf course, 650-acre park, municipal park. But in the downtown area, it's thinking outside the box. Milton, Massachusetts, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's pretty ritzy joint. It's not Brockton. But they were going to close their museum. And Degas and Picasso and Remington, it was all going to go away. They were going to go to the auction house. So I said, in the height of COVID, come to Brockton. Come downtown Brockton, please. And they did, and it's there now. So people are coming on the train, jumping off the train and walking across the street to see these wonderful masterpieces. They don't need to go into Boston right now. So again, I'm really privileged to be here today. I'm really honored, but I also want to just let you know before I leave, and I'm here to answer any questions for you, that if we as elected officials and as developers, if we lose sight of the fact that we're in the people business, we're all going to fail. We need to continue to, number one, market the municipalities that elected us, but also don't be afraid to learn from other municipalities. When Dan was the mayor of Lawrence, he did some things exceptionally well, and I wasn't afraid to replicate those. You have to do that. And so I'll leave you on this. In the height of COVID, again, in Brockton, we lost 586 people to date from that terrible disease. But I would come home because at 4 o'clock at City Hall, I'd get the death count. And I'd come home, and I got 3 kids, and my wife's a PA, and, you know, to try to manage, a lot of you know this, it was unprecedented in 100 years. And so I'd sit at the table and start working and continuing working, and my daughter, my 13-year-old daughter, Gracie, would say, Dad, you know, your day looks tough. You know, I didn't have gray hair before I was mayor, right? I'm starting to look like Obama. Remember when President Obama got elected, black hair? Then he had white hair when he left. But I want to say this. What Grace would say to me every day is, and this is applicable to anybody in this room, be the kangaroo, Dad. Be the kangaroo. And I'd look at her and I said, Gracie, honey, I don't really understand what you mean. And she said, Dad, kangaroos can only jump ahead, physically unable to jump back. So keep being the kangaroo. Keep jumping ahead, Dad. So I pass that on to you because I think that's relevant what we're trying to do today. Yes. Be the kangaroo, think outside the box, be business friendly, and let's get at it. Thank you.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Very dynamic.
Thank you.
We'll all try to be kangaroos. Speaking of kangaroos, I am pleased to now introduce an old good friend of mine, currently the Speaker of the House, Speaker Joseph Shekarchi. The Speaker and I go back to the days when we were both the relatively young staffers working for the dynamic former Rhode Island Governor Bruce Sullivan. He was really young. I was relatively young. And fast forward to the present, and we're very grateful. I still can't see where you are, Mr. Speaker. Okay, there you are, yeah. We're very grateful for your leadership in advancing several of Grow Smart Rhode Island's key goals, including a major increase in affordable and workforce housing, an improved public transportation system, and reinvesting in proven tools for Main Street downtown revitalization and creative community development, tools such as the Historic Tax Credit and Rebuild Rhode Island. And thanks much not only for your ongoing leadership, but for hot-footing it over here to offer your perspective before you embark on a significant trip to an important national conference. So we really appreciate your being here, and we look forward to continuing to work with you and to hearing your observations. So please, Mr. Speaker, come forward. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you. It's exciting to be here. Scott, you look as young as you did in 1990. You haven't changed at all. So first of all, thank you for letting me crash this wonderful event, and I appreciate Scott. I actually was leaving to go. I'm speaking at a speakers conference tomorrow morning. Actually, it starts this evening in D.C., and Scott invited me, and he said, "Oh, I can't make it, Scott." And I said, "Let me look around." And I don't tell the airport corporation I canceled my flight out of Greene, and I'm leaving this afternoon out of Logan because I really wanted to come here, and I really wanted to speak and say thank you. And I'll be brief and say thank you. This is a great rock star of a panel. Of course, I see some of my good friends, Mayor Grebien, Mayor Rivera, and of course, my good friend and the mayor of my hometown and a dear friend who's done so much about transportation in our city center, Mayor Frank Picozzi, who's taken that district that's been there since the 1990s and been dormant until the last 2 years. And it's really through Mayor Picozzi's leadership that we're seeing real concrete transit-oriented development in and around not only the airport, but the train station. And that just doesn't happen. And I give the mayor a lot of credit. We took an abandoned hotel, the Sheraton Hotel, that was very short on parking in Warwick, and with the mayor's help, we converted it into 250 units of workforce housing, and we were short on parking. What do? We created these little, if you go to the G-Pub downtown, you see the elevators where you pull in your car, it goes up like that, and another car pulls in. That was never been done in Warwick. The mayor did that, so we could do that. So, Mayor, thank you for your continued efforts. Mayor Grebien, Mayor Rivera, the train station is exciting in Pawtucket. We look for all the development around there. And let me acknowledge my colleague and good friend, Rebecca Kislak, is here, who is a big asset to me in the House, and she continues to strive for good stuff. So let me be very brief by tell you some of the things we've done last year. Of course, I see some of our planning board members from the city of Warwick here. It's so good. It's a great community and a great atmosphere. Thank you, Scott, for all you do. For what you do for Grow Smart Rhode Island, you, John Flaherty, everybody. It's a great organization. We need more of it. And this is a great opportunity. It's a great topic, transportation and development. It's so good for the environment if you do good planning. It's so good for affordable housing, workforce housing, which we're at a crisis level here in Rhode Island. It's not unique to Rhode Island. It's all across the country. I can tell you from talking to speakers from all over, this is not unique in any way. The problems we're facing here today are national in scope. We made historic investments and commitments last year, $250 million. That was 25% of all ARPA money allocated to Rhode Island went into affordable housing. Thank you, yes. Thank you, Amy, and thank you for Rhode Island Housing. We created a revenue stream of purchases or sales over $800,000, create a permanent revenue stream to fund the Affordable Housing Production Fund, and we jump-started that with an additional $10 million up front. We'll continue to do that. We've made investments in homeless. We funded $10 million into Crossroads. We have a $10 million basically grant for housing authorities to increase low-income housing. We need housing all across the spectrum. In about 2 weeks, I'm going to release a package that the House has been working on for over a year. We have two great study commissions, the Low and Moderate Housing Commission, as well as the Land Use Committee, and we actually started a third commission to look at surplus state property and see how we can match for the sole and specific purpose of creating more affordable housing. We're looking creatively. Thank you, Scott. Across that. My package has not been written. It has not been drafted yet. It is still being formulated. But sadly, we have many cities and towns already opposing it without even seeing it. Don't even know what's in it. We've heard certain things and we're afraid. I have resolutions from some of the more rural communities and some not so rural communities who absolutely oppose affordable housing. They don't say it quite like that. I'm paraphrasing it. But we're for affordable housing, but we don't have the infrastructure. We don't need any here in Gloucester. We don't need any in Exeter. We don't need any in various communities. Doesn't sell with me. Every community has to step up and do their part. Thank you. While I can tell you, I can't get into the details of the package, because like I said, believe it or not, it's still being drafted and written and fine-tuned, but there will be an incentive in the package for TOD, Transit-Oriented Development. There'll be an incentive to build in and around a train station or a transportation hub, because it's smart planning. It's what we need. It's good for the environment. We cannot forget that we have a obligation to the next generation of Rhode Islanders to leave a community, a state, better, or if not the same. We cannot keep making bad and poor planning decisions. We need to look at what we need today. At the same time, we need to look at what we're doing going forward. It's not easy. I know it's not easy. I know that some of the criticism has been labeled at me personally because I'm a land use lawyer and there's some kind of personal financial gain involved for me and my clients. Absolutely 100% not true. And if it were, believe me, the media would be all over me because they enjoy that. I stand very comfortable of where I am and on how strong I am on this issue. This is too important of an issue to be sidetracked. I see my good friend Mayor Avedisian. I still call him Mayor. He's been the head of RIPTA for several years. Not an easy job. Everybody wants more RIPTA service. Nobody wants to pay for it. Everybody wants free RIPTA. There's no free. It may be free to the people who ride it, but it still costs the rest of us, the taxpayers. He's done a good job as best as he can, and we're going to continue to give Scott the resources he needs. We need to continue to look at ways to be smart and productive regarding affordable housing, transit-oriented housing, and our environment. And by the way, they're not separate issues. They can all coexist. A little bit of hard work, a little bit of work with Grow Smart Rhode Island, we can make it happen. We're looking at repurposing our buildings, our factories, our mills that are vacant. Some of our schools are vacant. Why can't we, rhetorical question, if we go into any community in Rhode Island and there's a factory, because we're Rhode Island, we're colonial, we're old, similar to Brockton in Massachusetts, we're an old community, Mayor. Thank you for your speech. It was very good, by the way. Reality is if we have an industrial factory, an industrial use in a factory, why can't we convert that to housing, residential housing, bypassing the need to get local zoning? Because it's okay to have a factory there that has traffic and deliveries and noise and odors and whatever you want to call it the factory does. Let's have housing. Let's continue to meet all the safety codes. Let's meet the fire code, the safety code. We need landscaping or parking. Let's either get the variances for that or let's meet those requirements. But let's make these impediments, these difficulties, these hurdles easier to obtain so the private sector and sometimes the public sector, and sometimes a PPP, a combination of the private-public partnership, make it work. We need to look at this creatively. This package that I'm submitting is not going to solve the problems. It is clearly not. Brenda Clements has worked incredibly hard. There she is. You were here a minute ago. But, and many people, Tom Deller on the land, I can go down the list, all. I've had the dream team of Rhode Island advocates, planning experts, land use lawyers, housing advocates, homeless, all volunteering their time for 2 years. Not one person has asked for or received a dime in state money. And why are they doing that? Because they care and they want to make, just as all of you do. Why are you here? Why are all of you here? Because you care about the issue. You want to make it work. That's a calling, and you should all commend yourselves for that and each other. It's not easy, but we have to do it. And if not now, when? And if not us, then who? And I'm not afraid of the criticism, and I'm going to push back. Because the office I'm holding at the moment, and it's not mine, it's the office I'm holding at the moment, has a lot of tools at its disposal to get things done, and that's what I'm going to do. Thank you very much. Thank you for getting this job done, and I appreciate it.
I'm going to turn this quickly back over to Brenda, but I just wanted to compliment the speaker for his leadership, for his tenacity, for his vision. And I think we have the right person in the right place at the right time to really move this agenda forward in an exponential way. So we'll stay tuned and brainstorm some more about how we get from point A to point B. Brenda, let you get back. Thank you, Speaker, again.
Thank you. And I know, thank you so much, and there's so much great things. And again, I agree with the speaker. I loved your comments, and I loved your advice. Who said teenagers don't have words of wisdom, right? Those were great comments. So, but now I'd like to bring the master up, Ted Carman, to talk about it. Literally, I mean it, literally. He has written the books on this work and on the laws, certainly in Massachusetts. So please, Ted, come up and share your wisdom.
Thanks very much, Brenda. It's a real pleasure to be here. As she suggested, I started my career in Rhode Island, and my first real job was about a mile from here at Beneficent House, where I worked as the technical director for Citizens United Renewal Enterprises, Inc. You've probably never heard of it. A nonprofit that was started by Irving Fain in the late 60s. And I can say, coming back now and seeing how much downtown Providence has changed, it's just absolutely extraordinary. So that's number one. Number two, I came to Rhode Island because I was in the Navy. I was assigned to a destroyer in Newport. My wife and I bought a house at the time on the Point section in Newport, back in the days when they cost less than a car costed, lots less. Actually, we bought 2 houses for less than a car costs today at that time. And what's really interesting about that is that there was a nonprofit in Newport called Operation Clapboard, and there was a guy named Tom Benson who would work with people coming in to buy 18th century and 19th century houses to renovate them, and he coordinated with the banks, and it really made quite a difference. We were part of this first wave that came into Newport and it was a really quite poor place at the time. Rents were $40 for an apartment. The apartments didn't even have heat in them. They had a space heater in the apartment. So it was quite a different time. But that whole point of having someone to coordinate what's going on in the community can make a huge difference. So earlier this morning, we heard that only 1,000 units got permitted in 2022. Why is that? The answer, as a developer now, the answer is because nobody can make the numbers work. Rents aren't high enough to cover the cost of construction. And that's the same problem that Brockton has had. 10 years ago in Brockton, nothing was being built. And the remarkable success in Brockton is a function of the fact that the community has united around a vision for the downtown. Now, Brockton has the advantage of having a train station and commuter rail into downtown Boston that takes 35 minutes. So that's really a huge asset. But for the last 10 years, there's been unanimity about a vision for the city with the mayor, the city council, the planning board, the parking authority, the redevelopment authority, and the zoning board of appeals. And just to give you an example about that, we have 2 projects under construction now in Brockton, one with 55 apartments and one with 18. The one with 18 is the one that Marvin Hagler trained in during the 1980s. But we're going to do a 3rd project that's a couple of blocks north. It's going to have 120 units. We signed a P&S last August. We applied for a zoning variance in October, and on November 3rd, we got a unanimous vote approving 120 apartments. I mean, that makes coming to Brockton easy for a developer because you know what's going to happen as you move forward as long as you do it appropriately. So that's number one. Number two, Rob May, Director of Development, sitting in the back with his blue shirt and yellow tie, is the Director of Development and Planning in Brockton. And Rob has come up with a 7-layer DIP set of programs. And I want you to know that on these 2 projects we've done all together, it took 9 layers to make it work. And I'll just run through them. This is all available. Federal historic tax credits, state historic tax credits, HDIP tax credits, opportunity zone investors, both for banks and private individuals. A parking garage was built by Mass Development, which meant in our Hagler building, we didn't have to build any parking because the parking's right across the street. There's a TIE, a tax agreement, mass development, thank you, Dan, loaned with their TOD program, made a bridge loan and a permanent loan at 3.5% interest. We got the zoning for one of the projects was the 40R district, and the redevelopment authority. I left them out of the group that is behind all of this. The redevelopment authority took one of the buildings by eminent domain. It never would have happened. Dan, you were talking about these terrible buildings that sit vacant for 20 or 30 years. We had one, and the redevelopment authority took it by eminent domain. It's now being renovated. And so that's what it takes. The reason nothing's been built here, 1,000 units is not what the goal is because the numbers don't work. The way you make the numbers work is you get all of this has to be lined up so that it can work fairly seamlessly. And I'd just like to say, looking forward, the city is taking some very creative, aggressive steps to make it an even better place for development. One is they've got a BID, a business improvement district that's being organized downtown that's going to generate $700,000 a year to put ambassadors on the street to make sure that there are banners and so forth and events downtown. That's going to bring in retail, everyone believes. Secondly, Rob is masterminding a form-based zoning revision to the zoning code for the entire downtown so that it's much easier to understand what the zoning will be, and it's not just the downtown, it's 40 acres adjacent to downtown that's the old CSX yards. So the vision here is really quite extraordinary. And finally, they've got a plan to take Main Street, which is now sort of a speedway, one way, it's going to be two ways. There's going to be a lot of pedestrian and bicycle access. It'll be much more favorable for retail. So putting all of that together has made Brockton a really extraordinary place for development. And when we go to the equity, which is the money that's really critical to make these deals work, we've got a story that says, look at it today, but it's going to be different 10 years from now, and that can be sold. People will buy it if you have a comprehensive program like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ted. And I also wanted to note that our colleagues at Grow Smart have a lot of the paperwork, if you will, about all of the alphabet soup and layers, dip layers, however we want to refer to them, of different programs and resources that Massachusetts has. That a lot, the speaker left because we want to add a few more to his list of things that we would like to see in the state budget as well too. But we'll get back to him on that. But there's a lot of resources that exist in Massachusetts that we don't have here in Rhode Island that we need to have. So I'm going to. That's true too. So there's always, advocates always are our hands up. So I'm going to start. I know we've already heard from Mayor Rivera, so I'm going to hold you for a second, Mayor, and hopefully I'm sure we'll have some questions. But just in the interest of time, I'm going to start all the way down in Warren with our town manager, Kate Michaud, to tell about some of the interesting work going on there. So you can either sit there or come up, whichever you prefer. Okay.
Hi, everyone. So we had a kid from Lawrence and a kid from Brockton, and I'm here today, a kid from Fall River. So.
Hey, all right, hey.
But I think this is really wonderful today. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from what's going on in Massachusetts, and I certainly have learned a lot already. So if you don't know, the town of Warren is the smallest town in the smallest county in the smallest state. But we don't see that as an excuse. So every city and town needs to take their part in solving the housing crisis that we're currently in, and also in improving the economic atmosphere. The key to our redevelopment plan is Market to Medicom, which is a project that we've been working on for about 3 years. The town of Warren, while it is small, it is also extremely vulnerable to climate change and sea level rise, with an average elevation of about 7 feet. Through some studies that we had performed, we had identified that by the year 2100, we were anticipating the loss of about 400 buildings in town, about 700 housing units, and around 30 businesses. The assessed value of the lost property would be in excess of 10% of our total value for the whole town. So in accordance with what we'd found, we quickly came to realize that we need to find where we have high and dry land with services available, and we can significantly increase the capacity of that land to hold housing and economic development opportunities. So what we've identified is the Metacom Avenue corridor. If you're not familiar with Metacom Avenue, it's also known as Route 136. It's a state road. It's a 4-lane road. Not quite sure why. It's 3 lanes to the south and 2 lanes to the north, with a very small 4-lane section. Very much not pedestrian friendly. Very much automobile oriented. Not particularly comfortable to drive on either. It contains around 81 acres of land. Currently has about 54 buildings, 66 housing units, and 50 businesses. Obviously not ideal. It's almost 100% impervious. Almost every inch of land is paved currently, not that it needs to be. So what we've identified is that if we were to undergo a smart redevelopment of this corridor, we could see an additional 107,500 square feet of commercial development. We could see an additional 520 units of housing, and we could increase the tax revenue to the town by approximately $1.25 million, which may not sound like a lot to a big city, but our entire tax levy is around $25 million, so that's a significant increase for us. Some of the tools that we're looking to implement, and I hope to learn about more, we do want to designate the area as a special development district, and we're currently working on updating our comprehensive community plan to do so and to identify our growth strategies for the corridor. We are in the process of drafting a form-based code, which was mentioned earlier by one of the other speakers. Through that code, we could greatly streamline the permitting process as long as the developers are willing to provide the housing that we're really looking to include in the development process. We would also like to implement tax increment financing in this district, and the increment that would be achieved through the tax revenue, we could then put back into the public infrastructure that's needed for the area, particularly stormwater management and increasing the green space opportunities. And obviously, we are here for transit-oriented development. We really feel that increasing bus service on the corridor is going to be key to all of our plans. If you don't know, the 60 bus runs along Main Street, which is Route 114, which runs parallel to this corridor. It's one of the most heavily used bus routes in the state, and it is crucial for our population. And we're really hoping that through the implementation of a development plan, we can create the density that'll be needed in order to increase the RIPTA service to the area. And we consider that to be a high priority on our list. Unfortunately, this has become a very urgent situation for us. The pedestrian unfriendly nature of the corridor has been a recent problem especially. I got the phone call last Friday night around 11 o'clock, which the mayors know when you see the police chief on the caller ID at 11 o'clock on a Friday night, it's not good. And we had a pedestrian crossing the street with their 3-year-old child, and they were hit by a car. So unfortunately, this is the kind of thing that we're seeing on a regular basis, and obviously it's not good for anyone. So through the Market to Metacom plan, we're really hoping that we can achieve that win-win status. We can increase the tax revenues to the town, we can increase the housing opportunities, and we can increase the economic development opportunities for everyone in the town of Warren. So I'm hoping to hear more from everyone else and to learn what else we can implement in Warren.
Great job.
Thank you very much, and eager to see how the progresses. We're housed at Roger Williams University. We're at the Providence campus, but I often go to the Bristol campus and ride down Metacom and agree with all of your observations on that, but exciting potential there as well, too, so thank you. We are, just so that you know, because we want to make sure we have adequate time, we're going to push this till noon time, to ending time instead of 11:45, so that we hopefully have some time for Q&A. Lunch will be given to you. You may just have to wait for a few more minutes. So, but Before I turn back to Dan Rivera, I'd like to get one more Rhode Island one in, but I know you have some time constraints, so I'll get back. But are you sure? Okay. Well, then let's move to.
I'm having a good time. If anybody brings up another kangaroo thing, I'm happy. This is good stuff.
Sorry, Scott. Go ahead.
I'm good to stay.
Oh, it's other Mayor Rivera. Sorry, I'm getting my Mayor Rivera's. Okay, then I'm going to go to you next, then, Mayor, because I know you have time constraints. Thanks for clarifying that. In any case, but welcome, and we're eager to hear what's going on in Central Falls.
Thank you. Good morning. It's nice to be here with all of you. But I have two things to say before we begin. For those wondering if Dan and I are related, we're still trying to figure that out. This is what happens in Latino families. That's the first thing we said to each other. The reason why I'm blonde is because of all of the gray hair I have gotten in the 2 years I've been in this position. But thank you so much for having us here today. There's so many different things I could say. But there's one word that people really haven't talked about with what happens with train stations coming on. It's gentrification, which is really concerning to me. So when I came into office in the middle of the pandemic. Central Falls was the hardest hit community. We have a community of about 22,000 residents, 70% Latinos, low income, hardest hit community with the pandemic. Dr. Eugenio Fernandez was here, who was great helping us. But the reason why we were the hardest hit community was because of the housing issue in Central Falls. So we don't have a homeless situation of people that are sleeping in the street, but we have a homeless situation of we have 2 and 3 families living in one apartment for different reasons. With this train station coming, rents have skyrocketed. They're like $1,800 for a 3-bedroom in Central Falls. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, rents were $700. So how can you have 2 parents that are making minimum wage afford a rent of $1,800? So as much as I'm super excited about the train station and giving opportunities to our residents to being able to now travel on the train to get a better paying job, I have to focus on the residents of the city and making sure that we don't gentrify and kick them out. So what I did was when I came into office, I had a housing summit. 3 months after I came in, I had a housing summit on Zoom because of COVID. We had about 200 people attend. We had landlords, we had Section 8 tenants, we had Section 8 landlords, we had the Housing Authority, we had a domestic violence advocate, you name it, we had them on this call, which gave me an understanding, and I have to give a shout out to Kyle and United Way for sponsoring that event for us. Thank you. So after listening to all of them, we came up with what the challenges were in Central Falls and what we had to do. Central Falls has a $20 million budget. We really don't have a lot of space to build. It's a square mile. It's very small, and it's probably one of the densest communities in our country. So what I did was I went around the city and I identified all of these properties that were closed, that nobody was using, and I reached out to the owners of those properties, and I said to them, what are you doing with this property? If you're not doing anything with the property, the city is willing to buy it. If you don't want to sell it, we're taking you to court, which is what we did. And if you don't want to sell it, and don't want to go to court, you have to give me a plan of what you're going to do with this property, which is exactly what we've done. So thanks to the support of Rhode Island Housing and thanks to the support of the Commerce Office, Secretary Pryor, we've been able to get some funding. We've been able to purchase some properties, and we're working with one neighborhood builder, so we're going to have 2 huge projects. I wouldn't even say Central Falls has a downtown because we have 2 main roads. But we're going to have 2 huge housing projects that are going to be mixed development. My focus is affordable housing, and as much as I'm all for economic development and getting more money into the city, I can't stop someone, a private investor, from coming into Central Falls and investing and charging $1,800 a rent. But what I can do as mayor is focus on the affordable housing part of it so that everybody else can focus on whatever they want to do in the city and charge what they want, so I can take care of the residents of the city that live here now. We have many other projects happening, a lot of great projects. These past 2 years have been pretty overwhelming. Those of you who know me know that I came in full force, and we've been able to get tons of funding to get a lot of projects running. Just looking forward to continuing working with Mayor Grebien. The train station, this was a partnership that we did with him. You know, when the conversation started, I was not mayor. The treasurer who was here was the mayor, and I know they had conversations, and they started the Joint Planning Commission because we have different zonings and different ordinances, and we needed to work together to make sure that this train station was working for everybody. So with that, I'm sure we're going to have questions later on, but thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, and thank you for those comments. And just to throw out a housing fact book comment, 1 out of 3 Rhode Islanders are cost burdened. And so as we talk about how to move forward, making sure that the rising tide raises all the boats and that everybody benefits from economic growth and development. But I'll get off my soapbox and we'll start. But I'm going to go back down the line to the mayor of Warwick because there's a lot of interesting things going on around TOD there. So Mayor, welcome.
I really want to follow you. I'll probably be very brief because Mayor Abedisian and Speaker Shekarchi stole most of what I was going to say. This is City Center, our TOD district in Warwick. The roots of this started back in the 90s under the administration of Lincoln Chafee. That's when the concept was born. In 1998, Senator John Chafee announced a $25 million appropriation to build a train station and people mover connecting Jefferson Boulevard with the train station with Green Airport. The lesson there is if you ever have 2 very good candidates for mayor and you can't choose, pick the one that has a powerful United States Senator for a father. In 2006, this project was dubbed the Interlink. The groundbreaking occurred in 2006 under the administration of former Mayor Abedisian. In 2010, the master plan for Warwick was redone, rebuilt, rewritten to allow for this district. In 2012, I'm sorry, I can't read my own writing. In 2012, the council adopted this plan. And in 2016, the council approved a 15-year tax stabilization program to lure developers here, to make it attractive. They also, in addition to the tax stabilization plan, they made the zoning standards and requirements, they are very flexible. In Warwick, we have a very harsh setback rule. Warwick was a suburb. People like their long green lawns. In this district, there are no requirements for that. They can build up to 75 feet, which is more than anywhere else in Warwick is allowed. They can go beyond that with, special permission. We reduced the amount of parking, just 1.5 spaces per apartment unit. It's much more harsh in other parts of Warwick. City Center is situated in a former industrial zone. Mayor Abedisian talked about it earlier. There were chemical sites, brown fields. It was a disaster there. A former abandoned mill. It was an eyesore. The infrastructure started getting improved. The state helped us with a connecting road, Coronado Boulevard, that runs between Post Road and Jefferson Boulevard, where City Center is centered. It's hard to see from there. You can see the people mover. This is a unique area. There's not very much residential areas in the, probably for half a mile in any direction. On Post Road, the history of Post Road is at one time pre-interstate, it was a well-traveled road. It had a lot of restaurants, skating rinks, commercial development. Then in the 90s, it all became car rental parking lots and parking for the airport. When the Interlink was built, everything moved there onto Jefferson Boulevard. So these lots are still empty, a lot of them. And we're starting to see a lot of development in that area. The former Ann and Hope, finally, that's going to become a U-Haul storage facility, which will be instrumental when we bring these apartments in. Currently, we're starting to see it blossom. We have in the planning process, or through the planning process, close to 900 apartments right now, plus a hotel, all in this district. One of them has mixed use with restaurants and retail component. As we building up this momentum, we're getting more and more interest. We've been talking now about coming up with a method to entice the developers to have more affordable housing components. This is something we're going to I'm sorry he left. We're going to be talking to the speaker about, because we need help from the state. We have, to make this area more attractive, within a mile is the Warwick Mall, Super Stop and Shop, and many commercial developments. One of the things we have to focus on, they're not pedestrian friendly. We need to put in sidewalks and bike lanes to connect it. Excuse me. As I said, we're starting to see it blossom. We want to get a component in there for affordable housing. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, the mayors get a lot of praise up here, but looking at my planning director, who's in the trenches fighting for this all the time. So I want to acknowledge him, Tom Kravitz. And also, I saw her here earlier. She's the planning director in Newport now, but she was former principal planner in Warwick. And she was instrumental to creating this zone. Trish Reynolds. So as I said, we're really, it's sat dormant for quite a while, but we're really getting a lot of interest from developers, and there's a lot of potential there. There's a lot more land. One thing we're going to need is we need more commuter rail service, but we need to populate the area and demonstrate we have the need. And I don't know if Mayor Abadesian's around. We need a lot more RIPTA service in that area too. So as I said, it's promising. We want to add the affordable housing component. It's something unique to Warwick. Warwick is a suburb. It's 1940, we had 21,000 people, and by 1970, we had 85,000. It used to be farmland. It just grew overnight. But people love their single-family homes and their cars. They're kind of separated from this, but I think they'll coexist and live together. Thank you.
We're going to call on my mayor, Mayor Grebien, to come up to say a few words, and then we'll ask Mr. Rivera. I keep calling you Mayor Rivera because that's what you were when I was in Massachusetts, but Don, please.
Good morning, everybody, and I realize that I'm 2 speakers out from your lunch, so I'll do the best I can. First, Brenda, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for all you do on Housing Works Rhode Island. And thank you for your commitment to Pawtucket as serving and also staying in Pawtucket. Scott, to GSRI, thank you for your vision and thank you for having us. You heard from some great speakers, from Ted and from Mayor Sullivan, and Mayor Sullivan's right. It really is about leadership and it's learning from others. Brockton is a great example of what to do, how to do it, and so we've been following you, watching that, and stealing some of your ideas. In fact, Mayor Rivera and I were talking over there. Marketing is the key focus, so when you see the Pawtucket Central Falls marketing in your community, you'll know we're trying to get into ours. That's all right, okay? But all seriousness, there are a lot of great things. This commuter rail, this TOD development is going to impact both the Pawtucket and Central Falls communities in ways that we haven't even thought about now. We see that out there. We now finally have this train stop here, and you think about this. It was 18 years in the making, but 48 years from the last stop that we had in Pawtucket, because we used to have that train stop. So you think about that. So government takes a little longer. When you think about 16 years, we are here. And we also have the cone and thread. We have opportunity within those districts. We partner with our sister city of Central Falls, and we see the benefits. We have the TODs, we have the bids in place, we have the TSAs, we have those partnership, and is luring those developers in there, but we did not have the train station. And we were doing the mill hub. Now we have that train station. We have the opportunity to really grow on that. And, I want to give you a couple of different things to think about. We currently have, between Pawtucket and Central Falls, 150 of TOD development district combined in the back of there, right in that immediate area that's underdeveloped and underutilized. We are connected to the Brocktons, the New Bedfords, the Fall Rivers on that train, to the Bostons, to the Providence. I can tell you that we are a lot cheaper than community in Brockton, and definitely a lot less expensive.
But you're not the city of champions. That's the difference.
those are marketing points that we all have, right? And we need to build those activities. But we have mixed development that's happening. We have all of the cuisines. Central Falls has such a diverse culture of food, and we take advantage of that. But I need you to think about this. As I said, there's 150 acres of development potential. There's $50 million that was funded into this train stop with more to come. There's 2 million square feet of existing vacant and underutilizing historic mill space. There's about 2 million square feet of total development opportunity in the cone and thread. 200 million just in the last 10 years that has been invested in Pawtucket and Central Falls, and that was before the train station. You know, build it, they will come. It's here. We are benefiting from that. We have 1,000+ lofts and conversions over the last 10 years, and housing costs are 40% less when we compare ourselves to Brockton. But I commend and share Mayor Rivera from Central Falls' perspective. We have to balance. There truly is a balance. It's about workforce housing. It also is about the timing. We now have the timing. We have the train station. We need to capitalize that, take advantage of that, and balance all of our responsibilities. So I can't tell you how excited we are about the train station, about all the development, and partnering with many of you who we currently are in partnerships with and going forward. So I thank you for your time because I'm getting out of your way for lunch. So thank you.
Good job, Mayor. Good job.
Thank you. And I don't know about you, but I'm excited to hear all of this energy. And I mean, there's been a tough couple of years for all of us as we continue to fight the public health issues and, you know, getting death counts every night. I mean, I can just imagine what that does to your psyche as well, too. And we know this has been a challenging time, but it's also a reset button, right, and an opportunity for us to develop and grow in ways that benefit everyone as well, too. So with that, and I'm going to turn it back down to former Mayor Rivera from Lawrence and now in his role at Mass Development, and ask if you want to say a few more words. You can say it from there or come up here, and then I have a question for you. So, but.
I'm anxious to hear about the questions, so I'm good.
Okay. So it related back to current Mayor Rivera's question about, you know, gentrifying and creating economic diversity in a neighborhood or community is a good thing, right? We want to increase economic value. We want to encourage new investment and new development. But it has an evil twin, right? And that's displacement. And so can you talk about your experience in Lawrence and other places where we kind of get that balance right? We get that so that everybody gets value out of this change.
Yeah, I think that the two things that we used in Lawrence is we weren't as brave as Mayor Rivera in suing folks. I think that's a great tool. Hey, listen, you can't just let this very important property just sit idle. We have people on the street. We have people living on top of each other. But we did use the Lawrence Redevelopment Authority to go out there and try to gin up some of this development. We had a lot of people interested in some of the big mills. So we didn't have that big, but the biggest antidote to gentrification is local developers. People that grow up in your community, kids that went to your high schools, encouraging them to do the development. Now, it doesn't always work, if you're a poor kid and, I think Jay-Z said it, if you grew up with holes in your toes, which means if you grew up with holes in your shoes, you leave the moment you started making dough. And so sometimes that happens. Kids who grow up in those situations make some money, but for the most part, their mom still lived there, their dad still lived there, their whole family, favorite place to go eat. So that's a good antidote to it. It's not a perfect antidote, but they're going to see their family at church, and somebody say, "Hey, you let that thing happen over there? You did that to us?" So it's a good antidote to it.
Thank you, and thank you for that nice shout out for CDCs. That's the world that I come from, and as my new mayor knows, started in this business years ago, creating what was then PCDC, now PCF, that works in both of those communities. So you're preaching to the choir on that one. I agree. So now I'd like to open it up to you for your questions for anyone on the panel. And there's a mic right there, and we have a roving mic as well, or maybe we don't, I don't know, but that can be a roving mic if we need to, but please don't be shy and head up to the microphone if you have a question. see my colleague Annette's moving up, so I'll let you start, Annette. Go ahead.
Thank you all very, very much for your timely remarks. And to anybody on the panel, really, you know, we often talk about facts, but we also know that when we go out into the community, it's really about preparing people for change. You know, in Warren, it's a change, you know, that deals with climate resiliency, but in the suburban communities like Warwick or Cranston, where I live, there are people who, you know, moved there from a Providence, moved there from a Central Falls, and even within Pawtucket. They've moved from one side of Pawtucket to the other side of Pawtucket, and they are challenged by the talk of a bus going down their corridor. They are challenged by the idea that an ADU means that suddenly there is no single-family zoning in their town. So how do you really think about creating the narrative for change, especially for people who, you know, feel like they've already lived through the change and they like what they have now, but to prepare for that future? Thank you.
Anyone want to take that? Go ahead.
Just a quick answer. We talk about this a lot in Warren, and you mentioned Warren, and we really made a conscious decision within the town that when we hear someone say that they're afraid of change, what we hear them saying is that they're afraid of losing something. And it's our job to determine what it is that they're afraid of losing through that change and to address that concern. I think that's the key to the whole process, to making people feel heard and making people feel like they're part of the process. Not to say that we've been completely successful, but that's what we're really trying to do.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment?
The only thing I would add is I think you're exactly
Mayor,
right.
I'm not sure if your thing is on.
Oh, how do you turn it on? So I got a big mouth anyway, but no, you're absolutely right. We don't do enough in government, right? We do our best with the limited resource we have, but we don't do our best education. That's not our role technically, but we do. So I think by the way you deal with some of those things, and I'll talk about Pawtucket and Central Falls, where we did our joint zoning and planning commissions, and we focus in. You know, we went out and talked to people about that. We have people another opportunity to come in. We have different boards and commissions that allow people to come in and talk about it. So I think that that's very beneficial, but you're right, people are always going to be afraid of change, and at the end of the day, it really comes to the leaders in the room at that time, whether it's the mayors, the city councilors, to make the decision which they feel is best for their community, implementing it, and then there's always reaction after.
Greg, please. I'm sorry, anyone else have any comment before I move on? Ted, go ahead.
One of the things we did with Chapter 40R in Massachusetts is we said that the zoning was as of right for these districts, but there was the provision for design standards. And so the process of developing design standards for a neighborhood involves a lot of communication, meetings with people in the neighborhood, and that is a specific way to do it, because if you have as of right zoning, terrible things can get built. I mean, not every developer has a good aesthetic taste. And so design standards are a way to build in a lot of communication ahead of time, and B, some protection down the road to make sure that what does get built really fits into the community.
Thank you. Seeing none others, I'll move on to the next. No, we got a question right here, and then I'll come back to you. So we'll question at the mic first.
My name's Greg Garrett. This is a little bit off topic, but not real off topic. As we do these kinds of transit-oriented developments, one of the things that one of the people mentioned was the need to keep green space. And in Pawtucket, we have a real problem in that we're being, you know, some of the green space, the only green space in Woodlawn, is being closed to be turned into a parking lot. And despite the fact that it's illegal to convert that space, and the fact that there was no community discussion prior to this. So what I'm saying is that we need to really think this through much more clearly, and to have more discussion about the relationship between the green spaces in communities and this other kinds of development. And I'm hoping Mayor Grebien will meet with the people who are working to save Morley Field, because it's really been a problem to see the only park in a black and brown low-income community get closed to be turned into a parking lot.
Thank you, Greg, for raising that point. Do you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. No, Greg, thank you. I appreciate your passion, but I also have to set some of the facts straight, right? So people understand. We had an underutilized green space in Pawtucket, Morley Field, that a developer came in.
You're not going to go back and forth, Greg. Sorry.
Yeah, no, the developer, no, I'm not going at you, Greg. I respect it and I hear you. The developer came in and asked us to purchase it. We've sold half of it and we replaced about 3 acres with 9.2 acres, just not in the immediate area. So we were compliant to that. We are out there looking for green space. We are capital, but we also have to bring in new jobs, and that was a balance. I talked about that earlier. Everything was done legally. I know there's a passion and an argument. I know, and listen, I understand. We've heard you. You've been in front of the council. You've challenged, and I respect that. I do. I want to tell you that we are in this together. You're not losing green space. You might be losing that green space, but we're committed to the green space. So I think it's a fair conversation to have, and I'll gladly have them all day with you. But thank you. I do appreciate that.
And as the mayor knows, Woodlawn is my neighborhood too, and is an area that I feel passionately about too. So again, Greg, I think we keep working on this till we get it right. So
One thing I'd like to say, at least in Massachusetts and in Brockton, I created a partnership with DCR, which is Department of Conservation and Recreation. It's the state, and they've planted 1,700 trees in downtown, so free. And it's different species. So I can't speak for the state of Rhode Island, but I know the Commonwealth has stepped up dollar-wise and done free tree plantings in the city, and it's only in the core area, which has really been wonderful.
So we're going to go one more at the mic, and then I'll come back to you with this one, okay?
Hi, my name's Margarita Pryor. I work for an environmental agency, and this is not really a question, but it's sort of a plea to all of you there that you take into account the benefits that environmental restoration and protection actually provides for all of the other goals that you've described that you have. And my agency has actually given grants to a number of you here, and I think it's really important that the reasons for those fundings are going to be addressed through those grants, and that it's really going to be helpful for you in the future to maintain those areas, particularly now with the emphasis on climate change and environmental justice. And keeping those environmental possibilities open is really important for both of those big, broad themes, but also just for economic development and for human well-being. So I just hope that all of you can just kind of keep that in mind as you pursue economic development. Keep in mind that the environment has to be there, or it doesn't matter what kind of development you have, you're going to have all of those brownfields and toxic spaces all over again. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to take that one. That's really, I think I'm a big fan, as you heard earlier about CDC, the next best 3 numbers that a community could have is the EPA. And they spend a lot of time helping us clean up property to make it better, and in Massachusetts is DEP as well. A lot of money to get the cleanup sites, to get folks and make sure that we do the environment well. This cross-section of environmental justice and housing justice is critical. So every time an environmental justice person gets up talking about they should also say, have I missed the meeting to talk about housing? Because we need, when we talk about housing in places that already exist, to expand it, to make it bigger, where it's already zoned, it's not as well populated as when we talk about, we had this street in South Lawrence, we were gonna put brand new sidewalks and, this tree that, it's gonna fall down. It had been horribly kept, but it's a huge tree. Everybody came out, they want to take the tree down. They want to do sidewalk. I'm like, okay, we won't take it down. I'm going to tell you that it's going to be a snowy day, it's going to come down, not because we want it to come down. And then when we said, hey, we're going to build some affordable housing here and there, like, no one came to support it. A lot of people came out to be against it. I think that cross-sectionality is very important because what we're faced with is really tough decisions. These aren't easy decisions. And I think that's an interesting part of being an executive of a community. Your kids live in that community. You're not trying to create a community that's not better. You're trying to create a community that's better for everyone. And I think the cross-sectionality is very important. We have to be peers on that.
Thank you. Anyone else like to all agree that this is about community building, and there's a lot of aspects to that. Please.
Okay, I can't help but note that we haven't heard anything about Providence, capital city here, which already has a train station. They have a bus hub that has good service from every direction. It has, however, in my assessment, very little conversation in Providence about TOD. There's my impression is the new mayor and significant elements of the business community are not that interested in it. Years ago, they moved the train station a little further away. There's talk about breaking up the bus hub in the convenient location in Kennedy Plaza. So I'm asking everyone if they have any observations both about the potential for TOD to be much more important in Providence, even if you come from one of the other cities that you're mayor, and also what it would take to increase the conversation in Providence about TOD, because they have the transit more than any place else to make it work.
Could I respond to that? I spent 5 years in Pittsfield, Mass, trying to get the pyramid companies to build a shopping center in downtown Pittsfield. And they got a real education out of that. We ended up being unsuccessful. It was a very disappointing amount of effort that we put into it, because at one point we had Penny's, Filene's, Jordan Marsh, England Brothers all committed to downtown Pittsfield. We had all the money, and it didn't happen because of politics. And they subsequently came here and built your big mall right next door, right? So in many respects, you've got the perfect situation here, where the largest shopping center, practically in the state, I think, is right here at the train station. And I think that probably, I drive in today, it's astounding at how much different the downtown is than it used to be. And I think, or the city is. And so, to a great extent, much of what one would have said 30 years ago should be done has been done. You should be very proud of it.
We clearly have to push harder, right? And continue to push so that every community contributes, and certainly the capital city needs to probably do more than what they're doing now. So, anyone else want to comment on what Providence should be doing? Any other questions from our audience? Kyle, please come up. Kyle, from our good colleague from United Way, go right
Good
ahead.
afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Grow Smart, and thank you to this distinguished panel of mayors, former mayors, town managers, my favorite mayor in America, Mayor Rivera. We talked a little bit, Brenda, you touched on the notion of gentrification and displacement. One of the things that we focus on at United Way of Rhode Island is the disparities that exist between Black and Latino home ownership rates versus those of our white counterparts and colleagues and neighbors. Mayor Rivera, former Mayor Rivera, you talked a little bit about the role that community development organizations play in building communities that are both functionally, symbiotically, aesthetically incorporated to the existing housing structure, the nature and the fabric of the communities. That's important. Mayor Sullivan, you talked about building housing and community for people from Brockton. Can you share a little bit about how the development that's happened, and I appreciate so much about what you did in your leadership on the city council, because I already told my family in Brockton that you're here, and they're all excited. They say thank you. Viva Capo Verde. But can you talk a little bit about how you built housing that kept families and neighbors in place while improving the fabric of the community? Because I think that's really important in both maintaining a community and a sense of belonging, but also preventing the displacement that we've seen. And to the question about what's happened in Providence, as I look at some of the infrastructure and development that's happened here, we know that Black families in Rhode Island, and in Providence in particular, have been displaced time after time. It's almost as if we've become a nomad in our own city, in our own state. So I'd love to hear from your perspective how you help to maintain residents in proximity to the development, while also incorporating and investing in the community that you know and love.
Yeah, and thank you. And remember, we're 2-year mayors, so tell all your relatives I'm up, okay? My Chief of Staff, Sydney Merrill, is here as well, and I want to thank her and Suzanne McCormick from my team as well. We have to be cognizant of the fact, and I said this before, Brockton is not a wealthy community. We're a poor community. If you look at our financial ledger, what our value is the people that are in the city of Brockton. That's the true value. So much like what Mayor said, we have generational people. We have the grandparents living with the parents living with the kids, and that's why COVID ran rampant. So one thing that I've said as a lifelong Brocktonian is we don't ever want to forget about the people that are here. So giving rental assistance to our BRA, working with the Catholic Charities Group, working with our nonprofits. We have the Haitian Community Partners. We have Cape Verdean Association, Latin Women's Association, African American Association. We have worked with Habitat for Humanity. So I will tell you this, gentrification is really paramount to my administration. We need to make sure that that doesn't happen. That's why when I talked about that 40-hour smart growth zoning, it's minimum 20% affordable, not maximum, minimum. The fact that we have one of the, and the fact that there's another creature, it's called 40B, and it's some scary thing in Massachusetts, but we don't need 40B because we have one of the largest public housing authorities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So we need to think outside the box. We need to work with the developers to really articulate the fact that, we have a workforce, and this isn't just housing, this is bringing business in. That's the thing. It has to be together. It's a partnership. Making sure that the WB Masons that have been a corporate, WB Mason, who gets their office furniture and supplies from Masons, right? They've been in Brockton since 1880 downtown. So we need to continue to say, listen, we can't lose Brocktonians. We can't. I won't be mayor forever, but I'll be a Brocktonian forever. When I'm dead, I'm going to be buried at Calvary Cemetery in Brockton. So I want to thank you for that because people are afraid. I want to thank you, Mayor. People are afraid to talk about this, and you can't. It's short-sighted. You have to put everything on the table, vet it out. You don't have to agree with everything. You can respectfully disagree, but at the end of the day, as elected officials, we have a duty to represent our constituency, and that's every constituency. The rich people, the poor people, the people in the middle, and that's been my goal as long as I'm mayor. I want to be the mayor for everybody. We're better together. We need to collaborate and work together with an eye on the prize. So thank you for what you do in the United Way.
Yeah,
Can I is this working? Yeah. Just want to add something to that. Thank you, Kyle, for bringing that up. So Central Falls has the lowest home ownership rate, and that's also a priority for me. So thanks to my planning director, Tom Deller, who's here, we have identified empty lots in the city, and we're building homes that are going to be sold to the residents of the city of Central Falls.
It takes a village, right? It takes a lot of mayors and a lot of other individuals committed. So I don't see anyone else at the mic or see, go ahead, Kurt. Welcome, our former EPA director
I'm
and
Kurt
others.
Spalding, formerly serving under Obama as regional administrator of EPA.
When he had dark hair or white hair? Which one?
Got whiter.
And how many of those white hairs did you cause?
Yeah, it was awesome. It was an awesome experience, and what made it awesome was working with mayors like you guys, and specifically Mayor Rivera. There's a lot to this story he told, but there's a lot more, I can tell you. So, quick question. The big change that's going to occur in the next 2 decades, as you all do this, is, of course, the climate's going to change. Profoundly. We've just begun in terms of how fast it's going to change. So I just want to understand how this change you're promoting, and do you see it affecting essentially the kinds of homes you're building, the kinds of efficiency in those homes? Again, this whole idea of design, I know Ted can speak to that perhaps. Is that all being woven in? And Mayor Rivera, number 2, I want to tell you, or Mayor Rivera, number 1, because I'm from Rhode Island, your proaction is really what marks the important thing. So as a federal agency, we worked with mayors who were proactive, who would actually go buy that brownfield. You won't sell it? Well, you haven't paid taxes? It's mine now. That kind of message is really important. I know a lot of mayors are reluctant to take on contaminated property. Oh, I don't want the liability, and your counsel says no, and your lawyer probably says double no. Well, your proaction, I just want to tell you, is the thing I saw that made mayors successful. And Mayor Rivera was like that way, but great story about the mayor of Bridgeport sometime. But again, this idea of, well, how is what you're going to build change as our climate turns into something more like New Jersey or even Maryland by 2040?
Anyone want to comment? Ted, please.
Well, in our properties, we, actually, I left out one of the advantages. We have another program in Massachusetts called the Healthy Neighborhood Equity Fund, where they will make an equity, a mezzanine equity loan that pays 6%, and then at the end, they're looking for an 8% return. So this is mezzanine equity that comes into a deal between the opportunity zone equity and the first mortgage. And so it has a return that's maybe 9% as opposed to you need to get 12 or 15 or 18 for the other investors. And they only come into deals if they have, basically are very, very energy efficient. And we were going to do this anyway, but we put in VRV heat pump, heat capture systems, which are able to move, it's all a heat pump and it's all electric. It moves the heat. If you have one side of the building that's hot because of the sun and the other side cold because it's a shoulder, it can actually move the heat across very, very efficiently. So that sort of thing. Right now, the big issue is the problem of how do you provide hot water with electric that's not electric resistance heat. And the problem is that heat pumps have a really tough time doing that because you have to get the water so hot if it's a central system. But in fact, I think this kind of movement to all electric, coupled with high quality windows, very good insulation, and then an ERV system which brings fresh air in specifically, so that what happens is the air changes in the unit 3 or 4 times an hour, but you can pick up 80% of the heat or cold and of the moisture as the air passes through a heat exchanger. So all of that sort of thing gets built into these at this point. I think that'll help. The other point is that it's a lot more environmentally efficient to have people living in multifamily housing than it is to have them living in single-family homes.
Yeah, and a big challenge of some zoning work that we're doing, over close to 90% of the state of our state is zoned single family. And so we've got a lot more work to do. I know I see some hands coming up. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to stop because we're a little over overtime already. So we're going to end it here, and I invite you to lunch. And then there's some great panels where we'll be able to have some further conversation. So thank you, and thank you to our